Welcome to Market Outsiders. Today we are talking about a craze that is sweeping the world. If you haven't heard of Labubu dolls, then you can join me in the uncool club. I had not heard of Labubu dolls either, but we're going to talk about what the heck they are today, why the craze is sweeping the world, and the business decisions behind the rise of the brand. My name's Namaan. I'm joined by my colleague, Jenny Rae. Welcome to Market Outsiders. Before we dive into all things Labubu, if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and click that subscribe button now on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Leave us a rating and review. We welcome your feedback, and we need your help to get the word out to more people that this is a podcast that's accessible and helpful for them to learn about business and build business acumen. Jenny Rae, before we dive into Labubu, how are you today?
Hi, Namaan. I'm really excited to be here today. And I also don't have a Labubu, but I have, I'm in Southern California. So there are a lot of places where you can get a Labubu here. My favorite one that I discovered recently is at our local mochi store. So you can go get some mochi. You can get a little bit of maybe Papa Beard's puff pastry, and you can also get a Labubu. And I just think that sounds like a great afternoon. So I'm really excited to talk about this today. And the first thing that I just want to say is if you have a Labubu, I would love for you to post a picture or send us an email about the not just the product, but actually the experience of going to get one and where the story started. I think these are great examples of stories that have business wrapped around them. A lot of the time here on the pod, we talk about business that have stories hidden inside them. But I think that one of the things I'm really excited to talk about today is the story of Labubu. So if you have one and you can tell us your story, we'd love for you to send us an email or make sure that you comment on this article specifically. Are you ready to dive in, Namaan? Do you want to talk about what your doll collection looks like without Labubus? Because that sounds like a really interesting situation as well.
I think it's pretty non-existent. So this is going to be a short episode if that's what we're talking about.
What I want to know is, come on, you got to tell us a fun anecdote about your daughter, because I have 3 boys. So we don't have a lot of dolls. We have a lot of building toys. We do have a lot of stuffed animal babies. So we have a lot of bears. Like, they're a pretty good audience for a lot of shows that happen in my house. My kids are really into musical theater at the moment. And so they've been performing The Sound of Music, The Music Man. We just watched Oliver this week, so we're going back through all the classics. And but the one thing that I've noticed is, like, these dolls don't have a name; they're not special, but they are an audience for my kids. So what's the doll sitch in your house? Come on, give us a little bit of human context before we dive in.
Well, I'm trying to think here. We've got 3 baby dolls that are like my grandchildren. So I'm a very young grandfather. They are my 2-year-old's kids, and they are fed and put to sleep, and they get their back patted, and they are carried around, and they're pushed around in a stroller, like the whole 9 yards. One of my daughter's favorite activities right now is treating her dolls like they're her actual kids. And so that's the situation right now. I don't think my daughter would care if it's a Labubu or if it's like a doll from Walmart. Like, if it looks like a baby, like, she's into it. So, and I'm fine with that. For sure.
Does she have the same experience with teddy bears? Like, we have, teddy bears and like a stuffed elephant and other things in our collection.
No, she loves those too, but she treats them differently.
Okay, I love it. Well, one fun fact, and what I'll do is I'll put up the title of the article as we're getting started with this, is that when I was dating my husband, one of the first gifts that he ever gave me was a stuffed animal. And I regifted it like within a day or two, because I've always found stuffed animals in my bedroom or in my apartment. They felt like they were spy dolls. I don't know, maybe I watched too much like spy stuff or like read spy literature, but I always felt like they were looking at me. And so I took one over to my friend's house, and I was like, here, he gave me a doll and I don't know what to do with it. And so one of my first confessions to my husband was that I gave away a gift that he gave me, which was a Disney doll. I think the first one was a Tigger or Winnie the Pooh. And one of his first comments was like, what kind of woman doesn't love a doll? But here we are today talking about, right, the title here is how luxury brands are tapping into the Labubu craze. So I don't just want to talk about Labubus today, although I think it's really interesting. And I think we can talk about, hey, if you were Labubu and you're thinking about growing or sustaining the craze, where do you go from here? But what I'm really interested in talking about is this luxury brand set of partnerships that are emerging in the Labubu space. And I got the idea for this episode from a chat that I'm on, from the group of moms that I was a part of when I lived in New York City. And one of the moms was talking about how a Labubu was an incentive for a chore chart, and moms, like, chore charts are a thing, right? And so what she said was, my child is on track to complete this incentive by the end of October. Will Labubu still be a thing at the end of October, or should we think about accelerating the pace or changing what the actual incentive is? So I thought that that was a really interesting business question that I'm sure that Labubu is thinking about all the time right now, right? Like, in October, will we still be relevant? How do we stay relevant? How do we move beyond fad phase? And I think that this is a really interesting way potentially to do it. So let me just kind of share a little bit about the facts as I know them. As you heard already, Namaan nor I are consumers of Labubus so far. But for $27, you can buy a Labubu. It is a blind box product, so you don't know before you buy it which one you buy at $27. Obviously, on the resale market, you can know which one you're buying, but for resale, they often are going for more than $27. And they call it in this article a status symbol. I don't know that I would call it a status symbol. I think that there's a huge difference between a luxury item and a novelty item, which we'll talk about today in this pod. But it's talking about, right, whether high-end brands are testing whether fans are willing to pay luxury prices under the brand name, not necessarily under Labubu, that are specific to partnerships with Labubu. So it would be having, a specific item that is attached, in this case of this picture, to a purse, to a pair of shoes, to a dress, etc. But certainly these kinds of accessories, like purses or external accessories, make a lot of sense. The article goes into, which I think is interesting, some of the other collector items that were highlighted in previous label partnerships, and then also why this kind of luxury industry experts, including somebody from BCG, is talking about these high-end character collaborations. So I'm always interested to see consulting firms in the news, because I think this may pop up inside a case interview. I think this is the exact type of case conversation that someone like Bain would have right now in an open-ended, created format, right? If you're Labubu, what are you thinking about? Go. It's not necessarily easily defined inside a framework. It's a very relevant business conversation, and I'm excited to dive into it with you. So, Namaan, at first glance, what are some of the key factors you would think about when you're thinking about the Labubu business? Let's talk about it from Labubu's standpoint, because we're going to come back and talk about it from these luxury brand standpoints separately. How do you grow? How do you maintain the novelty, right? Was it strategic or was it opportunistic, right? How did this kind of Labubu craze begin? And then how do you sustain it, more importantly, right now, which I'm sure is the conversation happening right now inside?
Yeah. So from my vantage point, it's a tiny, ugly doll. All right. So that's what it is. There's one product. Okay. And I think that this was just like lightning in a bottle. So from my understanding, like, there's like a massive K-pop star that was seen with one of these, and it went viral because she had one. And so, like, okay, the product existed. Nobody knew about it, maybe outside of, like, China, which is where Labubu's from. And now all of a sudden, and maybe, like, Korea as well. Now all of a sudden a K-pop star is seen with it on an Instagram story, and like it blows up overnight. And so good. Like, sometimes you have to be good to be lucky. So, like, you had enough distribution to where, like, a K-pop star found it, and, like, she liked it enough to where it was a part of her accessories inside of an Instagram story. Like, that's all great, but it's that one kind of viral moment that really put Labubu on the map. And so, I don't think that you can manufacture mania like this. Like, I think the definition of virality is that you did catch lightning in a bottle. You can't actually make it happen. So, I just wanted to set that context and that background. Okay, great. Now that you caught lightning in a bottle, what the heck do you do now? So what I'd be thinking about, number one, is, okay, how do I ensure that these are exclusive? Like, if everybody wants them, then I have to make sure that everybody cannot get them.
Why not? Can you talk about that? Because there's the like luxury versus Walmart quadrant of the access scale. And this is a constant question that we talked about at Bain. I remember talking about it with rainbow flip-flops. I don't know if you ever had a pair of rainbows, but they were at the time only available in rainbow stores. And one of the guys in our office would sit at lunch and debate endlessly about how he wanted to buy Rainbow and then expand them through a partnership with Walmart. And it like stuck in my brain as this kind of question of like, why not make them accessible? Why not sell more of them by making them more accessible? What are the benefits, like the practical business benefits of limiting supply?
So your entire business is built on desirability, and when
Not
everybody
functionality, right?
not functionality, when
Mhm.
everybody can get one whenever they want, all of a sudden people move on to the next novelty. So this is something that's an overlap between novelty and luxury, is that scarcity drives both. And we'll talk about the differences in a minute, but like I'd be thinking about, okay, like a K-pop star was seen with this. So it's seen as something that's cool, that's edgy, that's desirable. Now all of a sudden, if all of my social group is able to get these, like no problem immediately, and we all have the same looking doll, okay, great. I'm going to move on to the next thing, because now this has become like a common thing instead of like an aspirational or desirable kind of status symbol, like the article said, right? It's just not a status symbol in terms of I have a lot of money, status symbol in terms of like I'm in the know. Like I was able to get my hands on one. And so like I'd be thinking about limited edition runs. I'd be thinking about like Labubu variants or variations, right? Maybe that's brand partnerships. Maybe that's different color combinations. Maybe that's different, I don't know, the dolls are wearing different fashion or they have different facial expressions. Obviously you can tell this is not my world, but I'm thinking about like what these different variants could look like. So I'd
Welcome
be
to
thinking
business.
about,
It's never our world
yeah,
until it
it's never
is, right?
your world. So to like translate this into business terms, I wouldn't be thinking about maximizing volume. I'd be thinking about maximizing contribution margin. And then I'd also be thinking about how can I ensure that like I am like incentivizing repeat purchases, because I don't think that this is like a mass adoption product. You don't want it to be, based on what we just said. So I need to keep going back to the well with the same customers over and over again, and like have them start building collections the way that people did with Beanie Babies. And so how do I do that? It's not just limited edition runs, it's some of this blind box selling that you talked about. And what that means is I don't know exactly what I'm getting when I buy it. Like there's like a surprise element to this. And so like the more product variations, the more limited editions, the more special editions I can come up with, uh, the more willing I think my super fans are going to be to continue to buy blind box after blind box after blind box. And what I'd be
Namaan,
thinking,
I want to pause you really quickly right
yeah,
there. Sorry, because I know you have another thought that's
yeah,
probably also really good. But again, tying it back to business terms, what does having a customer repurchase mean to me? Right? Because I've the alternative option is that I try to get it everywhere and everybody gets one. But what
uh-huh,
you're talking about is a different business strategy. Can you just make sure you press in on that one specifically?
yeah. Do your projects ever drag? Budgets creep? Deadlines slip? Or worse, do you deliver something that meets the spec, but no one's happy with how it got done? If that sounds familiar, it's time for Management Consulted's project management training. Our program brings consulting level rigor. These are the same tools and approaches that top consulting firms use, in a format you can deploy across your team now. You'll learn how to build battle tested project plans, anticipate and manage risk, align stakeholders early so surprises are minimized, track progress transparently, and hit those milestones without burning out resources. Each training includes tailored project templates, real case studies, and live feedback. No fluff, all impact. If you lead teams, work cross functionally, or just want fewer late nights chasing deliverables, this is for you. Head to managementconsulted.com/project-management-training. That's managementconsulted.com/project-management-training to invest in a program that will save your team time, money, and heartache. So it lowers my cost of customer acquisition. So because I only have to pay to acquire a customer once, but they're purchasing multiple products from me. And like the lifetime value of the customer is higher. And the way that I'm thinking about this from Labubu's perspective is that they're doing is thinking 80/20. There are 20% of people out there who like are into K-pop culture, who are into like ugly cute dolls, who are into like Instagram status symbols, and like they're not just gonna buy one, they're gonna buy six. And so like we want to target our business model, we want to target our messaging, we want to target our marketing to that 20% segment of the market that's going to drive an outsized portion of our revenue. That would be the thesis that I would walk into like a strategy meeting at Labubu, like it with like on day one of the job without knowing anything else about the business. And because this is like a Chinese company, I'm not sure if they're publicly traded. I don't know if we can start to break that out, but that's the way that I'd be thinking about the business and how I'd start to kind of turn this into more of like a permanent like fixture in someone's doll budget and someone's like collectible budget, right? It'd be okay, this is a collectible now. It's not just a fad. Right. And so kind of the last point I was going to make is you have to start to shift the branding around this. And I'm not exactly sure, honestly, how you do that, because I don't think Beanie Babies tried to do that. I think they just became a collectible. And so I think the more prestige there is around a product, the more scarcity there is around a product, I think the more naturally it just becomes a collectible. And I think that's probably Labubu's best bet at having some staying power, because we're going to talk about brand partnerships here in a minute, right? Like they're trying to stick these on Louis Vuitton purses, right? They're trying to like limited edition purses. Okay, great. Like that's going to be something that happens over the next 6 to 12 months, but like we're not going to have like probably like a new Labubu Louis Vuitton purse every single year. Like it's like a one and done kind of partnership, and there's a limited number of those partnerships that are available. So yes, use them now to like expand your brand awareness, use them now to like tap into like the upper segment of the market. But if that's all you're going to do, like you're not going to have staying power.
Namaan, I wanted to highlight two things that you said, again, kind of going back to some of the business basics underlying these. Number one is that there is a difference between what luxury does and what novelty does. So what luxury does is it tries to optimize for contribution margin per purchase or per product, right? So I'm trying to sell you a $10,000 bag that is a high margin, and I'm trying to limit demand because I'm recognizing that the only reason I get to a $10,000 bag is by limiting that demand. But overall, I'm maximizing my contribution margin exactly on a specific product, and therefore overall across my portfolio, right? So I multiply that number times the certain number that I'm expecting to spend, and that's how you get a Birkin bag, right? Or something kind of that level. This in the novelty category is a little different, because what I'm trying to optimize for is actually contribution margin per customer. You mentioned lifetime value of the customer. So one of Labubu's initial strategic options when Lightning in a Bottle got unleashed was to be like, look, we're going to make 10,000 of these, and we're going to sell them each for $500. They could have done that. They could have gone the luxury route, and they could have manufactured scarce demand, and they could have tried to optimize for that. They opted not to, because I think they're thinking about that optimal curve, which is a contribution margin per customer. If I don't know what the number is, but that would be a key factor that you'd want to know, right? What are the average number of purchases of Labubu dolls by consumers? Do they buy 1? Do they buy 6? Do they buy 40? Right? Because that number is going to be a huge input into your strategy. And then when you're thinking about novelty, you're trying to manufacture just the right curve where I can get one, but it's hard. Right? It's not impossible, but it's hard. So it creates a story and the thrill of going to get another one. And I think that's an important factor when you think about maximizing for the contribution margin per customer. What you're actually trying to do with these luxury brand partnerships is make them both accessible and novel at the same time, right? You're trying to make them so that you can buy a Labubu for more in more places. You are expanding the places that you can purchase them, but you're also expanding the novelty of your collection by limiting editions of each one of the Labubus every time that you bring it
And
out.
you're increasing the desirability because you are pairing it with like an aspirational brand. And
That's
so
exactly right.
yeah, and from like your Louis Vuitton perspective, from your luxury house perspective, this helps you break into like a completely different demographic of customer, right? Like most likely like younger female, right? Like again, high disposable income, but maybe a customer who never would have thought about like legacy luxury before will start to think about like what I'll call like modern luxury, because they'll buy a Birkin bag that has a Labubu attached to it, and they would have actually never just bought a standard Birkin bag.
That's right. So what I just think would be interesting here is I'm going to go through a few of the points in this article. We'll link to it so that you can review it as well. Like we talked about earlier in the conversation, a lot of these business conversations go to the business details, but they aren't detailed inside here. So you're looking for clues when you're learning about business and you're tying business acumen together. And to call Labubu a luxury brand, even though it uses scarcity, is not appropriate. It is not a luxury brand. It is a novelty brand. So this is talking about the difference between novelty and luxury. And it's highlighting a couple of these options, right? So Blackpink's Lisa pairing the toys with Louis Vuitton and Hermès bags, right? The coveted blind box toys. That's kind of an important point. They call it a relatively inexpensive status symbol. I would not call this a status symbol. I think that's actually not appropriate. It's a novelty item. It's a story connector. It is a conversation opener, but it's not a status symbol because you can get one. Namaan, if you want a Labubu, you can go get one today. I could go get one today. Maybe we should go and go get a Labubu today. It's not that it's impossible to get them. We don't have to have an Amazon Black card in order to have access to these. We don't have to have a friend who passes a note to somebody, to get the Birkin bag, right? Like we don't have to be on a waiting list. These are not pieces of this process. So I wouldn't call it a status symbol. But I think that these are very interesting, right? Customized Labubus dressed in designs are capturing, right, the top lot, fetching $31,250, right? So that's a pretty wild number. There are Labubus that are direct to consumer that you can buy on order. And this one came from Naomi Osaka, who had a crystal encrusted Labubu. By the way, I think the name LaBling Blings is maybe my favorite part of this whole article. But anyhow, right. And then we're talking about some of these other Parisian brands. Like some of you may not have heard of these brands. Understanding the luxury market is, I think, essential if you want to understand pricing and if you want to understand consumer demand curves, because this is not just about branding, which a lot of people would like to say. This is actually about optimizing along that pricing and demand curve specifically. It's also talking about, right, monogram canvas totes, the bag charms that retail for $450. So you're seeing this kind of new price point emerge in this luxury category. These are luxury Labubus, right? A $450 ugly doll is a luxury item. And that luxury partnership gives advantage both to Labubu, like we mentioned, by expanding the partnership and expanding what will naturally be the virality of these types of products because they're limited edition, they're storytellers, right? Each one of these attached to these luxury items is going to help them amplify their story, which brings down the cost of customer acquisition. Because all of a sudden, one of the best things that you can do in business is generate user-generated content that becomes viral. It's very inexpensive to do that. You don't have to pay for it at all. And then you're both expanding the understanding of it and you're also driving down the cost of each of those new customers. You're also, like, Labubu is not selling these for $27 to these luxury item organizations. They're either manufacturing them in-house or they're selling them for less than $27 and counting on the increased customer acquisition when they think about that business decision. It doesn't say in this article, but again, that's a business decision that they're going to have to make. Do you want to sell them for $22 or $14 to these luxury houses in a limited number, conditional on the fact that they're going to sell them for X to drive up the value of the collection overall? Maybe. Then there's kind of a couple of points of the article that go through other collector items. I think it's interesting to look at. But again, like if you come away from this and you think like branding is everything, I just want to make sure you know there's a lot of business mechanics on top of branding that are important. And then you see there's actually some insight from Boston Consulting Group. One of the partners at Boston Consulting Group, Jeff Lindquist, talked about collaborations that specifically, I think this is important, target customers who can afford high-end items but aren't fashion obsessed. So one option for luxury partnerships is that Labubu thinks my Labubu people are going to buy a new Labubu. But probably more importantly, like you mentioned, you're actually accessing a new pool of people who wouldn't have bought a Labubu, but are buying a limited edition luxury item that happens to be limited edition because of the Labubu component of it. And so you're actually expanding your customer base, which I think is pretty genius, actually, strategically pretty genius. Anything that you want to add on that?
No, I think that's a good overview. I'm still not buying one, but it's an interesting business.
It is an interesting business, and I think, like, anytime people talk about these kinds of viral crazes, part of why you probably don't buy them and I don't buy them is that we buy things like houses and shower heads, right? We buy these things that have, like, for us, a lot of utility over time. But I think that this is where the power of customer segmentation also comes in, right? When we would do a lot of work at Maine on customer segmentation, like, Namaan is not Labubu's customer. I'm not Labubu's customer. But we don't need everybody as a customer. In fact, when people pitch me on business ideas and they say everyone is my customer, I immediately know I'll never invest. And I feel like Labubu has
100%.
very strategically targeted this one specific category of customers. So if you're in that category, that you are of interest to this type of business, but also apparently based on some of these partnerships that we're seeing, and I will always trust that luxury brands are smarter than I am when it comes to this. They're enduring. They're strategic. They're incredibly thoughtful about the way that they put these partnerships together. And they also they use creativity to drive some of these other factors like scarcity. But I would generally assume that these are really smart partnerships for them, and they're going to play a really great role in driving up for what their items will be a larger contribution margin on each individual product.
Two final things for me. Number one, I just wanted to reemphasize when people purchase these and get their hands on these, they get a dopamine hit.
Mhm.
And anytime you can sell a product that gives somebody a dopamine hit, you can charge more for it. So, and it doesn't have to be drugs, right? Like it can be like something that requires someone to go on a little bit of a hunt, a little bit of a treasure hunt, let's call it.
That's
I
right.
think it's honestly, it's the same effect uh, that Costco uses really well. Like you go into a warehouse and there are like every time you walk in, there are new products you've never seen before, and you have been conditioned to understand that like those products will not always be there because Costco turns its inventory over so often. And so there's like just like there's a treasure hunt element to walking into a Costco warehouse for probably a different type of customer. There's a treasure hunt element to like trying to get your hands on a Labubu. And I think that's just an insight that shouldn't be missed here is that if you can inspire some kind of emotional reaction from your buyer, you can charge them more.
Is there a future where Costco has Labubus? Are you predicting this, Naman?
I'm not predicting it. I'm just drawing a comparison that I'm sure no one else in the world has made because they're incredibly different experiences and businesses. I would venture to say that if Labubu ends up in Costco, then their strategy has not gone according to plan. So I don't think that's part of the distribution strategy.
It is a really interesting idea though, because they maintain their treasure hunt in two ways. One of which would very much be preserved at Costco. So one is the idea of limited luxury, limited novelty, right? So it's hard to find where you can get one. And Costco would change that, but also because the blind boxing, the treasure hunt is maintained. And so if Costco gets, I mean, I wonder how long it would take Costco to go through one pallet of Labubus. It couldn't be a long time, right? But it's not a mattress. It's not a you have some like novelty food items. Sure, you've got the whole front section of a Costco that's a novelty item. I don't know. It may not be totally outside of the realm of possibility simply because they have those two elements of scarcity management.
Well, and that blind boxing was the second thing I was going to mention. It's just what the blind box strategy does is it inflates the value of your product on the secondary market because people are willing to pay more for exactly what they want. And they cannot come to you and say, I want the blue doll. So they got to go to eBay to find the blue doll. And I actually don't think Labubu's mad about that because when people see like, okay, retail price is $27, but I got to pay $270 to get the blue doll I really want. Or like, the what do you call it? It's like the bag attachment. The doll attachment is $450. There's like a crystal encrusted one that's going for $500 and it's $2,000 in the resale market. All that does is reinforce the perception of value. And now all of a sudden, you know what? 270 for the blue or 27 to take my chances. I'll take my chances. And it actually drives people back to you. And so that's also just like, I think a part of this story that shouldn't be overlooked is just the importance that the secondary market plays in keeping the craze going and in reinforcing the perception of value to the customer.
Labubu is a product lottery, right? You're paying a $27 ticket to go into a product lottery, and you might win a doll that on the aftermarket is worth more than $500. And you could even make a case for potentially having resale value for each one of these that does reinforce the hunt and the purchase. And the only thing that has to fall down in this market for that to stop is that people have to stop buying it somewhere. Right. But as long as there's another buyer one step down the chain, then yeah, you're exactly right, Namaan. You've unboxed it. You've captured the surprise. But for collectors, for somebody who's trying to build a full collection, which they've very strategically released these in collector sequences, right? So that it's kind of like it reminds me of playing the cereal lottery when I was growing up. You're probably too young for this, but where you'd have to like collect all of the letters in a name in order to like get the chance for the $1 million prize. That's basically what you're doing is you're buying a $27 ticket to a Labubu lottery. And the same way that lotteries work, that sense of like there's a chance that something inside here could be there, that could persist for longer than you or I would ever expect.
Well, and the added bonus is you get to post this lottery ticket on Instagram and TikTok. You can't actually post your real lottery ticket on TikTok. So there is the intrinsic value of the social media content.
Absolutely. Well, if you have a Labubu, we want to know all about it. If you don't have a Labubu, we want to know all about why not. But I'm sure that you have one degree of separation from somebody who does, and we'd love for you to kind of press into that story. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? What did we miss? There are probably huge pieces of this story that are yet to unfold, but we always think about these stories, these threads in our lives, and we tie them back to business conversations, which is really functionally how you build business acumen. It's not from a book. It's not from even watching a YouTube video. It's from starting to think about conversations in a new way and breaking them down into their component parts. And so please reach out if you have questions. If you're interested in corporate training to think about your business strategically, or if you're interested in case interview preparation, we are here to support you. You can reach out to us directly at the link in the show notes, or you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and more. Thanks again for joining us today.